Welcome to this latest video podcast about the Encyclopedia of Seventh-day Adventists online. The Encyclopedia of Seventh-day Adventists, or ESDA, was released on July 1st. It is the Adventist Church's first online reference work, and it features thousands of entries from around the world on many topics, including articles on Adventist missionaries and evangelists and leaders, on Adventist organizations and institutions, and on Adventist beliefs. If you haven't checked the ESDA website yet, please do so. Go to encyclopedia.adventist.org. That's encyclopedia.adventist.org, and browse nearly 2,500 articles and over 4,000 photographs. I'm David Trim. I am the editor of the Encyclopedia of Seventh-day Adventists, and my co-host is Dr. Dragoslava Santrac, who is the managing editor of the ESDA. And our guest today is Ashlee Chism. Ashlee coordinates the archives and library collections for the General Conference Office of Archives, Statistics, and Research. She is the Research Center Manager for ASTR. Ashlee, thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you, Dr. Trim.
Yes, Ashlee, thank you for being with us. For the beginning, could you tell us what is an archivist and what do you do as an archivist?
So an archivist is a lot like a librarian. A lot of people know what librarians do, but the materials that I work with don't leave the building. So a lot of people know public librarians, they get books out. Archivists, the materials can be books, they can be documents, photographs, audiovisual material, all sorts of different things. My job is I see it as a hybrid between a librarian and a historian. So I oversee the library and the archives at the Office of Archives, Statistics, and Research. And I work with its books, the catalog, interlibrary loan. I work with researchers when they come. I prepare materials to make them accessible to our researchers. And I support the research of those inside and outside of our building.
Yes, so you play an important role for the researchers for the encyclopedia. Could you tell us something more about your role in the encyclopedia project?
So I wear a lot of hats. One of the main things that I did and continue to do is work with the area editors when they request certain files on behalf of the authors that they're working with. I locate the files that have been digitized, go over them, confirm that the people who the files are about are deceased, make sure that everything is in accordance with HIPAA, and then...
Ashlee, not all of our viewers will know what HIPAA is.
Well, it's laws in the United States that mean that medical information cannot be shared except in certain exceptions. So in the cases...
One could summarize as saying you're ensuring that requests fall within U.S. government privacy legislation because we're in the United States.
Yes, so that we comply with the law while providing the materials to our authors across the globe. And when I've answered authors' queries that come in through the archives email address, put them to resources on our website, or when they've come in pre-COVID times, worked with them to look at the materials that we have in the vault. I've scanned photographs and other documents. I have run in conjunction with others at the Encyclopedia main office, done social media, and I've researched and wrote articles myself.
Yes. You mentioned the various materials that the GC Archives provides on its website and also in person in the archives themselves. Is what's on the archives website everything that the church has in terms of materials, manuscripts and similar that are important for research, for the encyclopedia and beyond? Mm-hmm.
No, it's a common misconception that everything on the website is everything we have. We have far more in the vault than is on our website, although our website has a lot of material that a lot of research can be done from. I would even say the majority of our material is in the vault.
And we have a lot as well, I think, that's been scanned already that isn't on the public AdventistDocuments.org website.
Right, which is one way that providing the materials to the editors for the authors was even possible, because there was material already scanned. If we had to start from scratch, it would have taken even longer. So I know I checked at over 200 different names of files of biographical articles that were being written.
Right. You mentioned at the end, you've also written 2 articles for the ESDA so far, and you've got others that are still being written. And let me just digress briefly. You talked about how you not only were doing those things in the past, you're still doing them, because let's just remind our viewers and listeners, there's a lot of articles that remain to be written, some of which the authors are working on, as with Ashlee, others we don't have authors for. So as you look through the ESDA, as you listen to the podcasts, please feel inspired to write for the ESDA and become a part of it. But Ashlee, you've written 2 articles so far. You've got other articles forthcoming. Tell us about the 2 that you've written so far.
So the first one I was asked to do was on Indiana Academy. I was asked because the person working on the project remembered me from history classes and thought, oh, she could probably write a good article for the encyclopedia. And so And
you actually attended Indiana Academy?
Yes, I'm a graduate of the school. It is one of the oldest boarding academies still left in the United States. And I was a boarding student there. So.
When was it founded?
1902.
And the other article?
Is on a woman named Jenny Thayer. So she was the first editor of the Atlantic Union Gleaner. Other things, she was a missionary in Britain and did a lot of editing and writing. Now,
Indiana Academy would have had an article in any case, because, as you say, it's a great age, and that alone makes it significant. Jenny Thayer probably wouldn't have been in the encyclopedia were it not for you and your research. So tell us first why Jenny Thayer should be in the encyclopedia, and second, what have you found out about it for the article that you wrote?
So in my work as an archivist, I was processing one of the collections at the archives. And in this collection, there was 16 diaries and an autograph book of Jenny Thayer's. So it's now its own collection because it didn't fit with her nephew-in-law's material. And I am working on digitizing, transcribing, and annotating her diaries. And in the course of it, she is part of the first generation of Adventists who grow up Seventh-day Adventists. She's born in 1853, after the Great Disappointment. And she goes to Battle Creek College. She becomes a missionary in Britain when it was first being established. She's working with Loughborough and Haskell and a young William Spicer, all these famous names, but they're famous and she's not. And have this option to look into what daily life was like, because she's recording things in her diaries, like what the weather was like, what she bought, what they ate, who visited the mission house, all those sorts of things. So she's really fascinating. And additionally, she never married. She was a young woman and then an older woman working in the church as an editor and writer and book repository manager. Worked with the International Tract in Missionary Society.
Yes.
It has an article, by the way.
Yes.
Yes.
But so, Ashlee, as you say, her diaries offer fascinating insights. You talked about her working with people who are remembered when she is not. Is she important enough to be in ESDA, even apart from the fact that her diaries offer these fascinating glimpses of daily life among Adventists, about which we know very little, it has to be said, but perhaps that alone would be a justification. But is there something about her that makes her stand out and say, yes, this person deserves an article in the Encyclopedia of Seventh-day Adventists?
Absolutely. I think the fact that she is deeply involved in many of these events in and of themselves, like her role in bringing these institutions to fruition is equally important. The Atlantic Union Gleaner, still published today.
And the International Tract and Missionary Society is in effect today the publishing department, which works around the world, no longer quite so important in North America as it used to be, but supplies the colporteurs, as Jenny Thayer would have called them, but literature evangelists today, who are working, even as we speak, there are literature evangelists knocking on doors, talking to people in shopping centers and offering them Adventist literature. So there's a connection there, I think.
And also the fact that personal ministries is the other part of what the International Tract and Missionary Society did. And that's today connected with Sabbath School. Thayer taught Sabbath School as well. All of these things are things that we can connect to. Mm-hmm. The fact is that it's not just the famous Adventists who made the work, who accomplished the work.
Yes.
That's the case today too. Mm-hmm. The famous names are not the ones getting all the work done. They do work, but it's the regular church member, the conference level folks who are getting things done.
Agreed.
Yes. And I think Thayer is an example of that kind of work.
Yeah. Yeah, and she definitely, as you said so nicely, represents this largest group of Adventist workers who carried and still carry the work of the church's mission without their names being widely recognized. But without them, the work would never be done, and the mission would never be, and the church would never be what it is today. I still remember, Ashlee, when you brought Jenny's diary, a very small one. It could actually fit on the palm of my hand. But even though it was so small, the page is very small, her handwriting is so clean and beautiful. And you read some passages from her diary to me, and her devotion to the church, to God, just shines through every page. And it is the prayers and dedication of these people that carried the work, as you said. And we hope that her example will encourage many church members that their roles and their work matter.
And I think, I'm sorry, Ashlee, to interrupt, but I think what we've tried to do, just to share with our viewers, is we have tried, as we've worked on the encyclopedia over the last almost 6 years, is to find those people who are exemplars, and whose careers and lives can be reconstructed because there are sources. It's very unusual to have the diaries. That's just a great, wonderful thing. But people who are exemplars of that wider body, who have borne the great part of the burden of advancing the work of the church. And of course, many of the women who, even more than the men, have tended to be forgotten for cultural reasons.
That's correct. I think there's a lot of work still to be done with researching women of the Adventist Church, including Thayer. Thayer was not an evangelist or preacher or anything like that, but it's equally important. And it brings to light one of the roles that women played in the church has not seen a lot of emphasis.
Yes. Ashlee, is there perhaps a particular event in Jenny Thayer's life that you would like to share with our viewers? Something that fascinated you or surprised you?
So,
or perhaps a quote from her diary. I know you read most of them.
Well, so recently I have been working on her diary from 1888. So a lot of Adventist viewers will know that that year is really important, theologically, controversially speaking. Mm-hmm. But for Thayer, it was the last year that she was at the mission in Britain. And then she travels home on ship. The city of Rome, and arrives in New York, takes the train back to Massachusetts, which is where she's from, and stays at the family farm, and then she ends up in the city of Brookline, Massachusetts, which is where she was staying with her sister and brother-in-law. And I didn't know anything about any of them, but I was, transcribing it, and there was words I was like, that's really interesting. I'm going to check what that is. And it turns out that she's just talking about how her brother-in-law just really likes to look at algae through microscopes, and he just is talking about it so much. And then I looked into it, and it turns out that her brother-in-law was the superintendent of the waterworks at Brookline, and he was the first one, and he held that role for 50 years. And a microscope that he owned is actually at Harvard in their special collections.
Interesting.
That's really fascinating. Like, it's not necessarily the event from her life in general, but the fact, you can connect present to the past and
yes.
forth. The fact that she died in 1940 when, my grandparents were alive already at that point. And she was, yes. So there's not a lot of time between me and the beginning of the church. There's
Suddenly you have it's almost like an immediate connection. Yeah. And it's a good reminder, actually, of that 150 years isn't actually that long in some respects.
Right. But then on another personal level, it connects one. So she's in 1876. She is at Battle Creek, 1877, sorry. She's at Battle Creek College. She's just gotten there, and she's a little homesick, you can tell. And then she's also, very excited about what she's doing, but boy, some of her classes are just giving her, a lot of trouble. And so I was just, transcribing that, and I was thinking, wow, college students today, they could relate with her, and this is from 1877.
But I think
that sort of thing.
I think also, some of her observations about what was going on around her. She's an unusually keen and astute observer. In the article that's on the website, for example, she has you quote very interesting reflections on her baptism at the Michigan camp meeting, and hearing the preaching of Uriah Smith, of course, a legendary figure, and D.M. Canwright, who's sort of an infamous figure because he apostatized, but both were powerful preachers. And her kind of spiritual observations and her reflections, I think, are very interesting, and give us that insight into what a church member thought. I was about to say an ordinary church member, but of course she does work for international associations and is secretary-treasurer of the Atlantic Union for a time. But when
she was baptized, she wasn't any of those things.
Right, but also, and somebody who is not working at the world headquarters, somebody who is not an internationally known church leader and who is forgotten, and who therefore is, I think, representative of the ordinary member. And as you say, she was for some of the diaries, and to have those reflections and insights are really very interesting. Ashlee, you are not a church historian in a professional sense, yet you contributed articles to the ESDA and are still working on others. What was your experience like with writing the articles for the encyclopedia? What would you tell any viewers who are contemplating writing for the encyclopedia?
Well, it's true. I don't have a PhD in Adventist history yet, but to do the historical work that I did and I'm doing, it takes a little bit of elbow grease, because I'm not always doing it at work. I'm doing it at home on the weekends and the evenings. It takes patience, and because you're looking through old periodicals that are on the website. You're looking at secondary material, hopefully, to provide context to the work that you're doing, the narrative that you're building. And it helps to have some grounding, perhaps, in historical methods, but I know there was previous podcasts that talked about that sort of thing. But I think going at it, trying it, attempting it, is better than not doing it at all. If you're interested in doing it, you should try, because the editors will work with you to improve it. Or even my articles, when I've had training, but I had edits that I had to make, things that I had to tweak or change or make more clear. So everybody goes through the editing process. The people are easy to work with. I at least think so. And I think it's important to attempt it.
And I think part of the thing to have too is a passion for the subject, which clearly you have for Jenny Theo. All our viewers will understand that, I think, by the end of this podcast. And if you have the passion, then the PhD doesn't matter so much.
Right. I mean, if you're interested in it, that's going to give you the oomph to stick with it, because that's the patience part. Because sometimes you don't find the answers that you're wanting, that little clue that will answer the big question that you're asking about the person or the institution that you're looking for, and you may not find it right away. But if you're passionate about it, usually you'll stick with it and keep looking. So
if somebody has a subject that they're interested in writing on, a person, say a grandfather, a great-grandmother, or someone with whom they have that personal connection, the chief things to have is the passion about the subject and a willingness to be industrious and diligent.
Yes.
Best can follow. Is that be a fair summary?
I think so, because you can always gain the knowledge that you need to write it, but the willingness to do it is most important.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much, Ashlee, for this encouragement to our viewers who are contemplating about writing, contributing to the ESDA. And as for the end of this interview, is there something that you would say for the end? Do you think people will find something interesting in the stories and information in the encyclopedia? Who do you think should read the encyclopedia?
Everybody should read the encyclopedia. I think it's really important for the average church member. When I think about that, I think a lot about my mom. And I know you both have probably heard me say this before, but my mom is one of those people. She is interested in church history, she is not trained in it, and she's a busy lady, and she sometimes will need to. She wants to talk about Adventist history at Sabbath school or for Vespers or something, and now there's a resource we can point her to, or somebody else point them to it so that they can look at it, pull a story off of that,
Yes.
be able to share it. That's useful, not just for personal knowledge, but also for use in the local congregation setting. So I think everybody should read it.
Ashlee, thank you very much for mentioning using the ESDA in worship with the congregation and sharing missionary stories. Just last Sabbath, I had a children's story based on the Encyclopedia article. It was a story about missionaries from Australia who served among the cannibals in Papua New Guinea. And I shared the photographs, and children were very excited about the story, and of course their parents. So the ESDA really has a wide usage in the church and of course in personal education. So thank you for highlighting that.
You're welcome.
And so, Ashlee, you would say then that this isn't only something for scholars. And I ask you this because, though, as you say, you don't have a PhD in Adventist history, you are a professional archivist. You work with the materials of scholarship. You've done some scholarly work yourself. And obviously, the encyclopedia is going to help Adventist historians and other scholars. But do you see it then as being something for more than professional academics?
Yes, I do. I think it's something that the encyclopedia is a new resource in order for us to tell each other our stories about us. The scholars tell our stories, yes, but our parents tell our stories. The older ladies in the church tell the story. Like a lot of our stories are how we make up who we are. We have our identity as members of the Adventist church. What does it mean to be an Adventist? Well, look at our stories. And the more stories that we have, the better picture we have of who we are, which is why this resource is so good, because it's telling more stories, and it's set up in order to have space for all those different types of stories: the good, the bad, the in-between, the successes, the failures, the triumphs. All those different things are part of what makes us Adventists. And for me, yes, that's not just the scholars, that's not just the pastors or the theologians, the regular church member who is having, trouble and can only make it to church right now via Zoom, or that they're not perfect. They don't follow everything perfectly, but they're doing their best, and God knows that. They're an Adventist too. What's their story? How are we connected? Because we are connected. And I think that's why the encyclopedia is very important for the average church member, as well as, the GC president.
Thank you, Ashlee. I think that's very well put, and a wonderful thought that we are the stories we tell each other about each other. It's a profound thought, actually, and it is part of what drives the Encyclopedia of Seventh-day Adventists. Ashlee Chism, thank you for all the work you've done to support the creation of art, writing yourself, and thank you very much for being our guest today.
You're welcome. Very glad to be here.
Please read the articles by Ashlee Chism and nearly 2,500 other articles at encyclopedia.adventist.org. We'll see you soon with another interview with someone who has helped shape and make the Encyclopedia of Seventh-day Adventists online, and with more stories from the ESDA. Thanks for being with us.